Okay, so Jolly, we're in Arkansas, right?
Mhm.
We got in last night. It's a beautiful night, right?
Right.
Weather was great. Sun setting. You're sitting out reading. I'm bored. So I need to,
Schedule.
as I do, right? So I need to go for a walk. I'm going to get some exercise. I go for a walk. Just going to take it easy. And I start walking. It's just beautiful. I'm taking pictures of the sunset and everything. And all of a sudden I hear a bzzz, like a loud one. And it's a big, giant horsefly. I mean, like this, I could almost ride it. The horsefly. I know where it gets the name. And he's just going at me. And I don't know if have you ever been bitten by a horsefly?
No, actually, it's the first time I've actually seen the big ones that we saw last
They
night.
hurt.
Yeah.
Okay, they hurt. So I'm walking, and I like smack, killed it. I'm like, yeah.
You're the man.
Yeah, I know. I feel very manly at the time. So I killed a fly. And then 2 more come. And one's big and one's little. And now they're like taking different patterns. Yeah, it's like, okay, now it's like turning into a game. And I'm walking, but I'm now kind of hunched over and clapping at the air. I'm really hoping there was nobody watching me going, what is this idiot fool doing as he's walking down the street? And so across that wall, I was walking 30 minutes. And so it was 2 miles. And between that 2-mile walk, I killed 14.
You were actually counting.
I was counting. And every time I killed one, I'd look at it on the ground, I'd step on it, I'd kind of point to the other ones and say, this is going to be your fate if you don't leave me alone. They didn't care. They did not.
Going crazy.
They did not care. And then so I get back and I tell you the story, and you're kind of laughing at me a little bit.
Right.
And then we're just sitting there talking, enjoying the evening.
And there it was, one more.
One more, and it bit me.
Yep.
And I killed it. And then what I do once it bit me.
What did you do? I don't remember.
I got up and I went inside and started crying. But I killed it. All right, here we are, the Jolly Johnson Show. It's our first trip abroad.
Our first road trip.
Our first road trip. Yeah, we drove from the Dallas, Texas area up to Bradley County, Arkansas, which is in what we affectionately call Southeast LA, Southeast Lower Arkansas, not Los Angeles. And it's probably not a huge tourist destination, but it's where my family is from. And I wanted to show you this and you guys watching Bradley County. And today we are talking to Floyd Brown. So Floyd, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
This is Jolly, and I'm Johnson, and we got Floyd Brown here today. So Floyd, what started us talking with you, you work at the Bradley County Veterans Society, is that correct?
Museum.
For the museum here. You want to tell us a little bit about what the museum is and what you guys do?
We are set up in the old American Legion hut, and it was organized here by Mr. John Little and Al Barnett, Cecil Carmichael, several of the World War II, Korea, Vietnam veterans. Back in 2003-4 time frame, they started to work on the building, and they wanted to honor the veterans of the Bradley County, anyone who's ever been a resident of Bradley County, and they started looking for pictures to go on our walls after they got the building renovated and brought up to habitable standards. We got a really good response from the community. Some of the people remarked as we started off that I hope we will someday get enough pictures to cover the whole front room. And they said, well, don't be too optimistic. And slowly, in about 2014 or so, we had all the walls covered with the portions that we were using for pictures, and we're looking at adding an expansion. on in the back, taking the old 1922 building that had been refurbished, adding on a brand new portion, trying to maintain the same theme throughout it. At that time, we moved our honor wall out of our conference room where we are presently sitting today, and the ones who were killed in action in the wars, World War I forward until today, back in the honored portion of the building. Mr. Baker Peebles from Hermitage was responsible for getting a setup on that honor wall back there. Worked with the Bryant family, and she did the lettering for most of the honor wall back there and helped immeasurably Mr. Peebles take care of setting up that honored special place back there. And currently we have about 2,900 pictures on our wall here, and we are still looking for pictures to commemorate the service history of our residents of Bradley County.
And so for those of you who don't know Bradley County is, like I said, is in south central Arkansas, and it is a typical rural county across all of America. The main crops here these days, well, it used to be cotton, but the lumber is big here, tomatoes, and a lot of cattle. And you're from actually outside of Bradley County, just 10 miles north of here, where we're at right now. And by the way, my family is from, full disclosure, my family's from Bradley County. My picture's on one of the wall. My dad's picture's on the wall. I got cousins. I got people, a lot of family members, a lot of people that I know on these walls. And, behind Alicia right now is the World War I, and I'm looking at it, and it's just, it's so interesting seeing pictures of people from World War I. And if you look deep into their eyes, it's, a lot of kids, just like kids any other time. That's, over 100 years ago that these people were there. But Floyd, we wanted to talk to you, and you're a veteran. So since we're in the Veterans Museum, tell us a little bit about how did you get into the service?
I graduated high school in 1964. Happened to be valedictorian of my class.
Wow.
And had ambitions of becoming somebody. And
well, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Floyd.
It was tough. It was not a good tomato year that year for the crop, and didn't get much money. And the scholarship was tuition only. It was not much of a scholarship even provided. And my dad worked at the mill 40 hours a week, $1 an hour. And there were 8 children in my family. And it was just difficult for me to support college. I didn't have an automobile to commute back and forth. I had to live on campus and worked in the library there doing library work, 50 cents an hour, and that didn't go very far toward. But anyway, I made it through the first whole year and one other semester and ran out of money. And the day that I disenrolled in college, very shortly, the Selective Service called my number to come up and talk with them. And I had talked with my recruiter, knowing that was probably on the way. And I told him that, I was interested in having some choice within the Army of, what I would be doing and serving my country. And so I enrolled in the administrative services typist type role with the Army. And I went up there and I failed my physical when I went to volunteer for the Army. And so they sent me back home, and I went to work at Potlatch and worked January through July. And I got another notice from my draft board, and they sent me back up for another physical, and they said, yeah, he's alive. Let's get him.
He's got a pulse.
Yeah.
He's going.
at that time, that was July of 66. And at that time, I went back to see my recruiter, the day before they were going to draft me. And he got it approved that I did meet the physical requirements, to be alive. And
you said that they called your number. What exactly do you mean by that? Was it you did not go into the Army voluntary, or explain to us what does that mean?
What I meant was, I had gone in voluntary and they wouldn't accept me. So okay. I was surprised to get a call from the
you were drafted.
Right.
That's what it means.
You were called to serve your country.
Up until Vietnam. And so she's from Jamaica.
Okay.
So she doesn't completely understand how our military works. And,
uh-huh.
and a lot of people will watch this from different places. And so she's trying to get an understanding of how it's happened. So up until Vietnam, you could volunteer. And that's what he tried to do. Or you can get drafted. And that's, you got to go. Military. And still, even today, 18-year-old males, when you become 18 years old, you have to register for the draft just in case you're needed. Some countries, males and females have to do some type of
military service.
So once you got into so they took you the second time. They checked to make sure you had a pulse.
Yeah, had a pulse.
You had a pulse, and then they moved you in, and you didn't go to Vietnam, but where did you go again?
Of course, I went through my basic training down to Fort Polk.
Fort Polk is in Louisiana.
Fort Polk.
How was that? It was a good time? Fun?
Shady pine trees that we could stand under out on the asphalt parking lots, and it was terrible. I was tickled to get away from there, and they sent me on up to Fort Campbell, and Kentucky. Big bus ride up there. They didn't tell us where we were going. They said, get on the bus. And, I saw where we went over the bridge there at Natchez, Mississippi. And I said, well, we're out of Louisiana. We're going somewhere. And then I saw when we went into Tennessee and then all the way through Tennessee to Kentucky. And the Screaming Eagles, 101st Airborne was there, and they met us when we got to the facility, and they made us feel like soldiers there. Been in a week now already. So I spent 8 weeks at Fort Campbell, and then was posted from there out to artillery at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Right. Was that a bus ride there too?
That was a bus ride out to Fort Sill, and so I was there from September, October, November. This
is all still 66?
This is all still 66.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left Fort Sill to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to the clerk typist training school.
That's where all the gold is at.
That's where the gold was in the tanks.
The gold
and got there about Christmas, and the first thing they did was send us home on leave again. The first 6 months I was in the Army, I had used 30 days of my leave. They're sending me home, just between assignments and such as that. So I was in the hole on that.
So, but when you came home, just out of curiosity, do you remember how your family, after 6 months of being in, were you a new man already?
When I went in, I weighed 133 pounds, and, most people lose a little weight in basic training, but they worked us hard and fed us good, and I weighed 160.
Wow.
I gained about 27 pounds. Looked a little bit different from the wiry old 95-pound weakling when I went in service. But I was there about a week or 10 days and on out to Fort Sill. And then, back home to Christmas after Fort Knox arrival.
Do you remember that feeling being home? Was it weird?
Yes, it was in the wintertime, and my Trammell reunion, my mother's family had their reunion while I was home on Christmas. And, of course, there I was all diked out in my Army slick sleeve attire, and they had a heavy duty for military service. So all of them run up. People that I didn't even know well, recognize me. Yeah, you're doing your job. You're doing your job. Just keep it up, keep it up. And then I left there and went back to Fort Knox, graduated out of my medical records, or out of the clerk typist school, and they sent some of us on down to training facility at Fort Sam Houston for medical records training. They were needing people over in Vietnam to take care of the records and body bags and and all those things that were going on over in 1967.
And where's Fort Sam Houston again?
San Antonio, Texas. So I went through. I was clerk typist, honor graduate coming out of there, and they gave me a big old cigarette lighter. I didn't even smoke, but they gave me an honor graduate cigarette lighter, and the guy who graduated second got a PFC stripe. Went on down to Fort Sam Houston, undertook my training there. It was about a 5 or 6 week training course. And the first class that graduated, everybody went to Vietnam. The classes had been underway for 4 or 5 weeks. Finally, as I graduated, they had filled over in Vietnam, and they were hollering for medical records people over in some of the other medical units in the Army, specifically Germany and Iceland and Panama and Alaska and places. So they split my group up and sent 31 of us over to Germany.
How was that?
It was a relief that I was going to get to go see some of the places that I had dreamed as a child of maybe having a chance in my lifetime of going on over there.
So let me ask you before you continue. Did it meet up to the expectations? I mean, was it as interesting and as cool as you thought it was going to be?
When I got there, like I said, I was over to 3rd Armored Division Combat Unit.
That's the one Elvis was in, right?
Yeah, that's the one Elvis was in, out Hanau. I was there in Frankfurt in my unit, Administrative Services Division of the Adjutant General Corps. But as I said, they were a combat unit, and they were out in the field at Grafenwehr, about 200 miles on towards Poland, close to the border down there, for their annual training exercise. So they kept us in the replacement battalion 2 or 3 days, loaded us on deuce and a halves, and we hit the Autobahn. And I spent.
You drove a deuce and a half. So a deuce and a half, just so you know, a deuce and a half is one of them big trucks that has the carriers on it. The troops are in the back of.
Yeah,
you ever see those big trucks?
2.5 ton, a whole bunch of all-wheel drive vehicles.
And he's on the Autobahn going. There's no speed limit.
Yeah,
on a deuce and a half.
Yeah.
So how was that?
I was in the back of the truck, riding on out to join my unit out there. And I didn't see them for 2 or 3 days, from having been there at Frankfurt alone in the empty barracks in the replacement battalion and such, until I finally got out there. And then they were out in the field firing their tanks, annual training, all that. And I was in the admin company and primarily guarded ammo dumps and such as that out in the Grafenwehr training area.
Just out of curiosity, was it pretty interesting being on a deuce and a half on an Autobahn?
It was everything was backward, because they had the tarp over us and we could see out the back gate and all. Right. But they may have told us we were going to Grafenwehr, but I've never heard of it and didn't know where it was, and didn't know it was going to be a couple hundred miles away.
So you just, whenever you got on a bus, you never knew where your life was going.
You're right. That was most typical. Just load up, and got out there and joined the people that I would be working with. When we were there another 5 or 6 weeks out there in the field, living in tents and
the field is the field. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Woods are the woods.
The old latrines and all of that, and it was interesting out there, but I could see that it was, a combat unit. They were ready to face off with Russia or whoever was on the other side of that border, if the balloon went up and they were called into service.
But did you get much time while you were in Germany to visit Germany.
We had days off, a little bit of leave and that kind of thing, and did get out and look over Frankfurt, interesting city, a financial type center, and over to Mainz, where some of my buddies were. I got pass, to go down visit with them. We had availability of some time off, but pay at that time was about $96 a month, and it didn't go very far on train tickets and all such as that. So I didn't do a lot of traveling.
So you didn't get to enjoy.
I didn't get to do a lot of it. I did make it over to England. I swore while I was there, that I would go over to England and to Paris and, to a few places like that.
Was that cool, though?
Yes, it was cool, especially, being from this section of L.A. and
Lower Arkansas.
Right. It was.
What'd you think of Paris? I've been to Paris.
Yes, I loved Paris. Was there a couple times while I was
Paris in 1968.
67, the first time probably, again in 68, and possibly in 69. When I was selected for temporary duty over in England, I flew over to RAF Greenham Common over there working on the exercise first look with the Royal Air Force base. Was with my sister organizations, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, Marine Corps, the British counterparts, the Royal Air Force, the Royal Marines, and the United Kingdom Army. And we were just all there together in one big group. And that is where my outlook on what I had not even dreamed of was going to 50 miles west of London with every weekend off. And I had a delightful time over there, with all the extra time off. It was cheap to get a ticket to London, and they had facilities there, especially for service people. Some donor had taken care. The Douglas House was one of them. $2 a night, for excellent hotel. It wasn't brand new, but it was excellent. And I was there several times. And some of my buddies from over in Germany would come over, and I became the resident expert of London tours while I was over there because I was there all the time.
And how did they like your accent?
None of them ever adjusted to that, neither the locals there in England nor the people in Germany, The officer,
did they like it, though?
It was amusing to them. Let me give you a reference here. When I got back to Germany, like I said, I had 1.5 years of college had started, and everybody in my office there at headquarters in Frankfurt was a college graduate, and most of them were from New York, one of them from New Jersey, 2 or 3 from New York, and New York City mostly within my office, and they would holler to one another across the room, ask Floyd where that pipe is, that we had working on the machine back there yesterday. I said, it's over yonder. And they would fall out into the floor. And after 2 or 3 days of this, always asking me where something was, I finally figured out they were just plain ass laughing at me. But they didn't get selected to go to England, when we all put in for that. I won the battle. I won the war. They won some battles going on there, but they didn't want a college graduate. They wanted a smart person. And so I did get to go over there. And yes, they did. In fact, had used all my leave up, and when I left Fort Sam Houston, I didn't have any leave to go home, so I went straight over to Germany, and finally, after 2 years having been in England for a while, I came back home, and my family met me there at the airport. "Well, Floyd, how are you doing?" Their accent had really, really changed, and they thought mine had.
Yeah, you got all city and
Say,
Yeah,
international.
right. They had thought I had gotten cityfied over there with those people in
right?
England and New York City. But anyway, it was amusing.
It was amusing. So you've already mentioned a little bit, but being prior service myself, you met just about every kind of person in the military, I assume. What was the thing that you noticed about? I mean, meeting people from New York and meeting people from England and Germany and all that kind of
Different
stuff.
countries,
Different countries.
and cities,
What was
cities, countries.
your What was your takeaway from that?
Well, when I got down to Fort Polk, my first station out there, nearly everybody came down with me from Arkansas. There's a few people there from down south, and just threw us all in together. Didn't notice much. We were racially integrated and all such as that. And I could see the beauty of how the Army had worked out. It wasn't perfect, but much, much different from Jim Crow, back where I left, those laws were still in effect. Those kinds of laws were still in effect here. Bradley, Cleveland County, Arkansas.
When the Army was kind of having integrated.
The Army was fully ahead of that power curve on that. We all got along fine together. Told us the first day, all of us were green. No difference in the colors. And I began to see that, appreciate that, and I left there and went up to Fort Campbell, and the units coming in from Cleveland, Ohio, Michigan, places like that, they were there before we got bussed up from Louisiana. And they were the squad leaders and the class leaders, that kind of thing, in charge of us. And it was a bit of difference. I ran into that for the first time, being around Yankees.
Right.
Never had before. And the first thing I noticed was how similar we all were, different accents and those kinds of things, but some really genuine people from that Midwest, the ones from Indiana and Ohio and Michigan and
Salted
such.
ears.
Oh, just swell people, just I didn't even know about them and never had run across that. Hadn't run into the New Yorkers and the New Jersey types, yet from there. And they had such a different accent, from us and all. It was a little bit of difference. I got into my unit before I ran into that, and it was an eye-opening thing for me. But I learned that we're all about alike.
What about, did you meet any German people or English people while you were there?
I had forgotten about that. When I was in that replacement battalion, when I arrived in Germany, we were in 21st Replacement Battalion there in Frankfurt. And they sent us out for detail. We were waiting for orders, to go to our unit. I didn't know where I was going to go beyond that 1st Replacement Battalion, 21st Replacement Battalion that I was in. And I got detailed out to a painting job. It was Brown, Brown. I was selected. Watanabe, one of my mates who came over to Germany with me, had been in medical, Watanabe, Watanabe, and there was one other Japanese descent who went on the detail with me over there, and was working with that German painter. And he would be painting on the wall, and he'd need a bucket of paint, and he would turn to Watanabe and try to read his name tag, and and then he had turned to Matsumoto, the other guy who was working with me there, and try to And he said, wrong, wrong, Herb Brown, giving me the paint. And so I was on a detail.
You had to do everything.
That I had to do everything
You were
there.
the translator.
I was the translator. I had to do all the paint work. But yes, those boys got a big bang out of it too. They had known me for several months down at Fort Sam Houston before we got to Germany. But we stayed in there 3 or 4 or 5 days, and I don't know, our numbers got mixed up somewhere. You know, we'd like to never have gotten an assignment, and that's when they sent me to 45th Med Battalion, which was in 3rd Armored Division, and then I went from there. Sergeant Major pulled me out and brought me on up to headquarters there with the Adjutant General shop.
So, and then after that, I know we're jumping. I just don't want to keep you too long. But after that, after the Army, you got out of the Army, and then you met your wife?
Yes, we had lived across the field from each other, had known each other, went to church together every Sunday, you know, that kind of thing. But she was 4 months younger than me, but birthday fell that she was in a different class. She was in the class just under me. She happened to be the valedictorian of that class, but, you know, outside of that, you know, we didn't have very many things, you know, sweet girl in church. She played piano and all those things. And she just wasn't, as I wasn't, very romantic growing up. And she never did date much, and I didn't date much. And she went on to college. The year after I started to college, she started, and then she graduated when I went into the Army. And when I got out, she was already through college. And we still had a friendly relationship, but had no idea of marrying her. You know, she didn't either. It just was happenstance that.
What else had happened?
Yeah, it was. Anyway, I started back to college again and ran out of money. Again, and she was working already, and I had a job, and I didn't have a job, and I didn't have any college, and so I was just waiting around, and I finally got a job at the paper mill at Pine Bluff, and so I got a job in May, and we had dated, watched some movies, you know, that kind of thing. From that September, October, November time frame up until I got my job at the paper mill. And I asked her about getting married. Neither one of us could find anybody. So she said, well, we'll give it a try. And
it's so romantic.
Yeah, always been romantic. But we had 49 wonderful years together, and we traveled all 50 of the states here in America.
That's
and
great.
Toured. When I was posted over, when I applied for and was accepted for auditor's position over in Germany, civilian auditor, my wife and son went over there with me, and she didn't work outside the home. She planned tours of Europe. She had taught geography 3 or 4 years already, junior high school, and she wanted to see London. She wanted to see Copenhagen. She wanted to see Israel, and she wanted to see Greece, and she wanted to see Budapest, and she wanted to see Czechoslovakia, and she wanted to see England and Stratford-on-Avon and London, and you know, she planned tours. And it was bountiful, you know, that I could use my leave. I had leave that I accumulated too. And I would work a little while, and then we'd vacation. Made it out to the Normandy beach. I thought Normandy beach was a beach like Pensacola, you know, a mile long or something like that. But where they landed there, 60 kilometers, the British, the Canadians, the Americans. Oh, it was an unreal undertaking. We had a real eye-opening
Being there
tour,
is different, right?
And of course, I took my wife back to London. I took my wife to Paris. I took my wife to.
How cool was that?
Berlin. It was so. They enjoyed it. Probably the highlight, I was thinking a day or two ago, was her getting to go out. She majored in English, and in college and was a Shakespeare student, but she got to
Stratford
go
on
out
Avon.
to Stratford on Avon, and she said, let's check and see if there's anything on down at the theater. And I said, well, not likely. Went down there, and the Merry Wives of Windsor with Falstaff was on that day, and it was about 10 minutes till start time when we got there. And we didn't get to sit together because the theater was nearly full, but my son and I let her have the better seat up front where she could concentrate on that. And she had a delightful time on that Shakespeare. And
lovely memories.
yeah, it was lovely, lovely out there. And we got to see Yul Brynner when we got back to London on The King and I. He was on stage at the Palladium, and she sniffed out that nugget, while we were there. And my life was filled. She also was an artist, oil painting. She started over in Germany, and we toured Rijksmuseum, the Albert Museum, the Louvre when we were in Paris, and the Saint Paul's Cathedral down in the Vatican City when we were in Rome. All those frescoes and paintings that my wife and I had seen in the Bible all our life, those pretty, pretty paintings. And we just went everywhere and did everything we wanted to do, and toured about 30 countries over there in Europe while we were over there this time. We're set to go to Russia, and it impacted when the Olympics was canceled. Mr. Carter chose to not let boycott the Olympics, and it canceled all the hard work my wife had put in on getting tourist visas and such for us to go to Moscow. And they lifted that after Mr. Carter was no longer president, but we were too short to go through the approval process coming back home, and we actually didn't get to see Moscow, Russia over there. But it was about the only place that we had planned to see. We loved Israel, we loved Greece, those countries over there. It was the most eye-opening. Certainly, nobody else from L.A. had ever been on
Lower Arkansas.
had ever been so extensively involved in meeting the people of the world. And my landlord, when I was over in Germany, had been a prisoner of war down at Corpus Christi. He came out of North Africa as a prisoner of war, German prisoner of war. And he had come back, to his country. And when I rented the house, he was a house painter. That was his job. And he had a little shop there near, where my house was. And he would come by and pick up tools, and I would see him frequently. He spoke a little bit of English. And I spoke a little bit of German, and we would speak and sometimes know what we were talking about to each other, sometimes misunderstandings, but it was really interesting. And my wife oil painted, and he'd see her painting, and he told me, he said, I paint too, and he brought her a painting. They exchanged paintings, and we still have it displayed in our home here in Warren, Mr. Ruess painting that he gave us. And we just met so many people across the world and corresponded with them. And my wife was still friends when she passed last October. Had a spinal and brain disorder that just, she's got to where she couldn't chew, couldn't swallow, couldn't eat. And then it lasted only a few months that she was really, really ill, and then just in hospice 24 hours before she went away. But people she corresponded with all over the world, we had met over in Germany when we were back over as civilian auditor over there.
So 2 valedictorians from New Edinburgh, Arkansas, L.A., Lower Arkansas.
Lower Arkansas.
So you said
Decided
to see the world. Sounds like you became somebody, Floyd.
Well, we didn't have very high sights, but our son did. And, there were 17 in my graduating class, probably about 20 or so in my wife's graduating class. But our son, Jason, when we were in Whitehall, probably 150 or so in his graduating class, and he was the valedictorian there.
Oh, it's in the family.
At Whitehall. And, and that was an accomplishment there because,
Sure.
the competition was intense there.
Yeah.
It was less intense where we went to school. And we were proud of him.
What's your son do now?
He is in Garland, Texas.
Right down the street
His
from me.
wife is in medical software, and he works with her, and they do a little bit of software work and ER rooms, and my son's into some local sales, those kinds of things. But
So
his
computer
degree
software
is computer systems engineering.
So he's doing all right.
He's hanging in there.
He's hanging
in there.
Sounds like it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to ask Alicia?
He has gone into so much depth with
That's
his
great.
life, and I think you have lived such a wonderful life. I think it's a life that a lot of
Inspiring.
people dream about, and it's very, very inspiring. So now, I don't know. I could ask you: Are there any regrets? Were there any things that you wish you had done, or places? Well, you've visited the world, so
Moscow.
is there anything you wish you had done, or any regrets in life?
Well, as I previously mentioned, my wife did want to go to Moscow.
Yeah, but that was outside of your
that was outside of anything
control.
that we could do. But when we got back here, and even when we retired, I talked with my wife about going back to Paris, going back to London, and she said,
You're satisfied.
she said no. She said we had lovely experiences there, and there are bombings at Harrah's, and there are these things going on, bombings in Paris, and she said, I don't want to chance something like that interrupting the beautiful, beautiful time that we had. And she said, Floyd, you remember when we were younger, I told you I wanted to do my traveling while I was young. I didn't want to plan for retirement to do anything, but on that thought, I wanted to go to Alaska. When I was 6 years old, my mother's two sisters moved with their husbands and families to Alaska, 1951, 52. They drove up the Alaska Highway and moved to Seward, Alaska. And Mother wouldn't let me go with them. I cried and cried, but she still wouldn't let me go. But all the time, that I met some people from Alaska when I was in service and talked with them, but I always wanted to go to Alaska, but I wanted to drive the Alaska Highway. I didn't want to fly up there, and it takes a long time, and nobody would give me 45 or 50 days leave on my jobs. They said, you're a little bit more needed than that. And so when I retired, my wife and I loaded up my pickup, and we made hotel reservations for every night, but we aren't always able to make the reservations. I had a camper shell on my pickup that if we got caught out between, and, we had rest facilities in it too, and that we were going, and we spent 50 days going up to Alaska, driving all around Alaska, over to Sitka, over to Juneau, over to Homer, to Anchorage, to Fairbanks, just toured the facility, nearly every blacktop road in Alaska because there aren't many up there. And that was in 2003, a year after I retired in 2002, age 56. And we were still both in good health, and we just enjoyed the fire out of that extensive 50-day Alaska tour. And we kept journals each day. After we got back home, upstairs in our bedroom, she had a little pull-out drawer, and I had one in the case on my side. We would wake up in the mornings and just reach over and get our Alaska journal. What did we do on June the 21st? She'd turn there and read her full day's description.
And you read yours.
And I would read my days, and sometimes they were slightly different, and concentrate on different things.
Floyd, that sounds kind of romantic.
He's a very romantic guy.
It was borderline, and again, always she would say, "I did not want to wait till retirement, and do all this planning." And I understand, Alaska was because they wouldn't let us off that long, or wouldn't let me off. She was the business manager for the Arts and Science, Southeast Arkansas Arts and Science Center at Pine Bluff. Had a very beautiful career with them. I think I told you she did oil painting. She's got a trunk full of blue ribbons in the Bradley County Fair here, where she would put her paintings in the fair. And she also is a seamstress. Her grandmother hand quilted and showed Nell how to do the hand stitching. And all our married life, she worked on making quilts and making craft objects, the Raggedy Anns and Andes and the little owls that she would sew with her machine, and then we would stuff them and give them to kids in the community and those kinds of things. And she did several quilts, applique, where she would cut out the individual pieces, put them back together, sew them around to one of them was our favorite cities in the world, and she had Venice and London and Paris and Copenhagen and Pisa, Italy, and Rome, Vatican City, and had everything on it except San Francisco. And we had not gone to San Francisco when she made the quilt. And I had, the Army sent me there one time. Loved San Francisco, and I could not get her to put San Francisco on that quilt. She hadn't been there. And that was one that was in late life that we did get to go to.
What beautiful stories.
Yeah, no regrets is basically
no regrets. I could sit here and just listen to you like forever.
Okay.
Just beautiful, beautiful. I think you have lived a beautiful life.
I certainly have. And I am sorry we didn't get very much military work
in. Oh, no, it was not about the military. It was all about you.
It was about Floyd Brown.
It was about you, Floyd.
Well,
it was all about you.
What's next? So we talked about what's happened. What are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, I think you could probably figure out the most tragic thing ever happened to me. October the 14th last year, and I lost my lovely wife.
What's her name?
Nell. And she died undiagnosed as to her condition. Her sister had died 10 months previously undiagnosed. We don't know what was wrong with either of them. 1 week after Mother's Day this year, I got a message from my son. I'm in the hospital here in Dallas, Dad. He said, I've had a cerebellar stroke.
Oh, my goodness.
And he said it has to do with my balance and my inability to be able to stand and walk and that kind of thing. And I'm getting treatment right now. But,
he's okay.
I'm still alive. That's what I'm searching for is breathing each day. I've been out to see him once soon as Texas lifted their COVID quarantine. And he's going to the doctor. He's doing everything they say do. And age 40, be 48 in December. And I really haven't planned much,
You're still mourning.
Kind of
You're still
mourning
right
and
now.
looking. It's just I'm trying to get over that. I get hit again, and right now he's doing considerably better. So I'm about ready to start doing some planning. But
like the Army said so many years ago, you still got a pulse.
Got a pulse. That's for
still
sure.
Got some adventures for you.
Surely is. So my wife did turn to me. We had talked to my son on the phone. You know, when she got through 5 days testing there at St. Vincent, they couldn't find anything that was causing her to be unable to swallow and such. And you know, we talked about end stage, and she didn't want a feeding tube to go be a vegetable in the nursing home somewhere. And she had talked with my son about it, and she turned to me, "What are you going to do, Floyd?" You know, I was so dependent on her.
Right.
She was the smart one of the family. And I said, "Well, you know, I'm going to continue working at the Veterans Museum, just like I have been." And I said, "I'm going to live in your home." We lived there bought it in 98, and she died in 21 years, the longest we ever lived anywhere, and the home that she enjoyed the most of our full life. And 49 years together, most of it or a lot of it in that home.
It's a treasure.
Blessed place
It's a treasure.
to live. So I guess
Floyd,
that's about the end.
Well, Floyd, thank you very much. We just met this morning. Isn't that weird?
That is.
We didn't know each other existed until a few minutes ago, a couple hours ago.
3 hours ago.
3 hours
the
ago,
most.
yeah, impacted us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jolly, and thank you guys. Remember, hit subscribe, say like, or whatever the things you crazy kids do. Thank you very much, and have a great day.